Sarah's hand shook as she scrubbed the expensive china in the mansion's gleaming kitchen. The yellow rubber gloves couldn't hide the trembling that started in her fingertips and traveled up her arms. Behind her, strapped securely to her back, her 8-month-old son Michael shifted restlessly, his tiny fists gripping her uniform. This was the first time she'd ever brought him to work, breaking her own sacred rule about keeping her personal life separate from her job. The bruise on her left cheek throbbed with each movement, a purple reminder of last night's horror. Her husband's voice still echoed in her ears like shattered glass. "You ruined everything," he had screamed, his breath reeking of alcohol and disappointment. "You and that crying brat are nothing but chains around my neck." She had begged him to lower his voice, terrified he would wake the baby. But David was beyond reason. His fist had connected with the wall first, leaving a hole in the drywall. Then his hand found her face. The words that followed cut deeper than any physical blow. "Find some other fool to take care of you. I'm done with this circus." The door had slammed with such force that the windows rattled. His car engine roared to life, tires screeching against asphalt as he disappeared into the night. By morning, Sarah realized the truth that would change everything. He wasn't coming back. The rent was overdue. Her purse contained exactly $3.47, and she had a baby who needed everything she couldn't provide. Standing in this kitchen now, washing dishes that cost more than her monthly salary, Sarah felt the weight of her impossible choices. She could have stayed home and lost her job, or brought Michael here and risked everything anyway. The other staff members already whispered about her bruises, about how thin she'd become. Now they would have something new to gossip about. But what choice did she have? None of her neighbors could be trusted, and her family had turned their backs on her years ago when she married David against their wishes. Michael whimpered softly, sensing his mother's distress. Sarah rocked gently, whispering broken promises through her tears. "Mama's sorry, baby. I'm so sorry you have to live like this." Richard Blackstone adjusted his silk tie as his driver pulled up to the imposing iron gates of his estate. The canceled merger meeting had left him frustrated, but grateful for an unexpected early return home. At 42, he had built an empire through steel determination and calculated risks, but today's corporate games had left him exhausted. As he stepped into the marble foyer of his mansion, the familiar silence that usually greeted him felt different somehow. Something was wrong. Then he heard it, a sound that shouldn't exist in his perfectly ordered world. Crying. Not the distant wail of a neighbor's child, but something closer, more intimate. The sound drifted through the hallways like smoke, growing stronger as he followed it toward the kitchen. His Italian leather shoes clicked against the polished marble as he moved through his domain, confusion building with each step. His staff knew better than to bring personal problems into his home. This was a business arrangement, nothing more. He pushed open the kitchen door and froze. The scene before him shattered every assumption he had about his carefully controlled environment. His newest maid, the quiet woman he'd hired 3 weeks ago, stood hunched over the sink with tears streaming down her face. But it was what he saw on her back that made his breath catch. A baby, small and vulnerable, strapped against her like a living reminder of desperation. "What is this?" The words escaped him before he could stop them, sharper than he intended. She spun around with the terror of someone caught in an unforgivable act, her eyes wide with panic. The bruise on her cheek caught the kitchen light, dark purple against her pale skin. More marks dotted her arms, like a roadmap of violence. In that moment, Richard saw something he hadn't expected to see in his sterile world: raw human suffering. "Sir, please, I'll finish my work," she stammered, trying desperately to wipe away tears with her sleeve. The baby shifted against her back, whimpering at the sudden movement. Richard stepped closer, his business instincts temporarily overwhelmed by something deeper, something he'd buried years ago under layers of success and carefully constructed walls. "Who hurt you?" The question came from a place he didn't recognize, a voice that sounded nothing like the cold businessman who negotiated million-dollar deals without blinking. Sarah's world collapsed as the words tumbled from her lips like water from a broken dam. "My husband left last night," she whispered, her knees giving way as she sank to the cold kitchen floor. The baby's weight pressed against her back, but it felt lighter than the burden of her confession. He said we were nothing but chains around his neck. He took what little money we had and walked away like we never existed. Richard watched this broken woman crumple before him, and something shifted in his chest. He'd seen corporate executives cry over lost deals, witnessed grown men beg for second chances in boardrooms, but this was different. This was survival stripped of all pretense, humanity at its most vulnerable. He hit me when I begged him to stay, she continued, her voice barely audible. I tried to hide the bruises, but I couldn't cover them all. I put makeup over this one, but it keeps showing through. The millionaire crouched down slowly, his expensive suit creasing as he brought himself to her level. You should have told me, he said, but his voice carried no accusation, only a strange gentleness that surprised them both. Sarah shook her head violently, clutching her son closer as he began to fuss. People already think I'm shameless for bringing him here. They whisper that I'm begging for pity, that I'm using my baby to get sympathy. If you knew the truth, you'd throw us out just like everyone else wants you to. Richard's throat tightened as memories flooded back, memories he'd spent decades trying to forget. His mother's face, bruised and swollen, whispering apologies to a world that had failed her. His father's drunken rage echoing through their tiny apartment. The taste of fear that had flavored every meal of his childhood. Look at me, he commanded softly, and when she raised her tear-stained face, he saw his past reflected in her desperate eyes. You are not shameless, he said, his voice carrying the weight of hard-earned wisdom. You are surviving, and I know exactly what that looks like because I lived it too. The words hung between them like a bridge across impossible distance. My mother carried the same bruises, spoke the same apologies, made the same desperate choices. I swore that if I ever had the power to change things, I would. The kitchen fell silent except for the soft whimpering of the baby and the steady drip of Sarah's tears hitting the marble floor. Richard stood slowly, his decision crystallizing with the clarity that had built his fortune. But this wasn't about money or business strategies. This was about the promise he'd made to a ghost, to a mother who died before she could see her son escape the poverty that had nearly destroyed them both. From this moment forward, everything changes, he announced, his voice carrying the authority that commanded boardrooms and moved mountains of steel and concrete. You will not spend another day scrubbing floors with a child strapped to your back. I'm arranging proper childcare immediately. Professional, safe, trustworthy care that will give your son what he needs while you work. Sarah's sobs intensified, but now they carried something new, hope mixed with disbelief. Richard pulled out his phone and made 3 calls in rapid succession. First to his personal assistant. Margaret, I need you to contact the best childcare service in the city. Emergency placement, starting tomorrow morning. Cost is irrelevant. Second to his housekeeper. Mrs. Patterson, prepare the guest suite in the East Wing. We have new residents as of tonight. Third to his head of security. If anyone, and I mean anyone, on this staff makes disparaging comments about our newest family members, they answer directly to me. He knelt beside Sarah again, watching as understanding slowly replaced terror in her eyes. I'm not doing this out of pity, he explained, his voice gentle but firm. I'm doing this because 30 years ago, someone should have done it for my mother, and no one did. She died believing she was worthless, that her struggles meant nothing. I won't let that happen again. Not in my house. Not while I have the power to prevent it. The baby had grown quiet, as if sensing the shift in the air around them. Sarah reached up with trembling fingers to touch her son's tiny hand, and for the first time in months, her tears weren't born of desperation. Sir, I don't know how to thank you, she whispered. Richard helped her to her feet with surprising gentleness. You don't need to thank me. You just need to let me help you build something better than what you're escaping from. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the same kitchen, but everything had changed. Her son Michael sat in a high chair nearby, babbling happily as he played with colorful blocks, gifts from a man who had transformed from employer to something approaching family. The bruises had faded completely, leaving only faint memories that grew dimmer with each passing day. Her cheeks had filled out, her eyes had regained their spark, and her uniform no longer hung loose on a frame weakened by stress and malnutrition. Richard walked in that morning to find her preparing breakfast, not as a servant, but as the head of household management, a position he'd created specifically for her skills and dedication. "Good morning, Sarah. How's our boy today?" he asked, ruffling Michael's blonde hair affectionately. The child reached up with sticky fingers, and the millionaire didn't hesitate to lift him into his arms, designer suit be damned. This had become their morning ritual, one that filled a void in Richard's life he hadn't known existed. "He's perfect," Sarah replied, and the simple words carried weight beyond their meaning. Perfect not because life had become easy, but because they had both learned that sometimes the most broken people can build the strongest foundations together. She had enrolled in business classes at Richard's insistence, preparing for a future that stretched beyond servitude into something resembling partnership. Her apartment in the East Wing had become a real home, filled with laughter and plans, and the kind of security she'd never dared imagine. The transformation hadn't gone unnoticed. Other staff members, initially skeptical, had come to respect the quiet strength Sarah displayed and the genuine care Richard showed for her family. Some whispered about the unusual arrangement, but those whispers had evolved from cruel gossip to admiring acknowledgement of something rare, true compassion in action. As Richard prepared to leave for another day of corporate warfare, he paused at the kitchen door. "Sarah, I've been thinking about expanding the childcare program to other employees. What do you think?" She smiled, bouncing Michael gently. "I think your mother would be proud of who you've become." The words hit their target perfectly, and Richard nodded, understanding passing between them. Sometimes the best revenge against a cruel past is creating a kinder future. Sometimes broken people don't need fixing. They just need someone willing to help them build something beautiful from the pieces.